Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, the Answer Company. The division championship Minnesota Twins are looking to go all the way to the World Series in 2024. Bolstered by inspirational shortstop Carlos Correa, a healthy Brian Buxton, and rookie phenom Royce Lewis, plus a pitching staff led by Pablo Lopez and an outstanding bullpen featuring Johan Duran, the Twins are the best bargain in the major leagues, and Target Field is the best venue in baseball. Sheridan Dulas & Kins, PA, a family and criminal defense law firm, has been serving clients in Dakota County and throughout Minnesota for over 40 years. Ranked a Tier 1 Best Law Firm by U.S. News and World Report every year since 2009, Sheridan Dulas & Kins are here to help you in your most difficult life circumstances. Established in 2007, 45th Parallel Spirits was among the first 50 micro-distilleries in the United States. Based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, all aspects of production occur at our facility. If you're interested in visiting and learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check our website and plan a visit to tour our facility and taste our spirits. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
Hello and welcome to Access to Democracy. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Bill Raker, your host. We're welcoming as our guest on this edition of Access to Democracy, Noah Lewellen, who's an Assistant Attorney General for the state of Minnesota. Noah, welcome to Access to Democracy.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Noah, I know the AG office has kind of specialty areas where the different attorneys who work there kind of concentrate. I believe your area at the moment is more focused on scams and frauds and things of that kind of illegal nature.
Right. I'm in the Consumer Protection Division at the Attorney General's office, and that division, along with our Consumer Action Division, which is our phone room and front room, handle a lot of reports from consumers about fraud and scams.
Well, that's what we're looking forward to your telling us about today as we title our program, How the Minnesota Attorney General's Office Fights Fraud. So, Noah, let's start with maybe a background about what the Attorney General's office is and what its mission is.
Sure. So the Attorney General is the chief legal law enforcement officer in the state. We represent over 100 state boards and agencies. And maybe most relevant to our conversation today, we're in charge of enforcing Minnesota's civil consumer protection laws. We also do some criminal work from referrals from outstate county attorneys and some criminal appeals, but again, primarily civil, and that's what I'm here to talk about today.
And so your area of consumer protection obviously deals with fraud, scam, misleading practices that may be detrimental to consumers here in Minnesota. So tell us a little bit more about how that role fits in with the overall mission of the Attorney General's office.
Sure. So Attorney General Keith Ellison's overall mission is to help Minnesotans afford their lives with dignity and respect. And I don't know if there's a more pure representation of that than helping people afford and repair and afford their lives after being scammed and avoid scams to begin with.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about how the Attorney General's office is staffed, the number of professionals who work there, and then the other support staff people?
You know, I couldn't tell you exactly how many people are at the AG's office. I think there's over 100 attorneys. I guess I would say probably almost 200 at this point. And we have investigators and paralegals and legal assistants that all help us accomplish that mission.
Well, it's an important mission. And let's get right into the heart of what we wanted to talk about. What are some of the top scams that you're seeing in Minnesota today?
Yeah, so some of the top scams that we see on a repeated basis are romance scams, deed scams, utility/government impersonation scams. Those are, I think, the three most common we see.
Do you have numbers like the number of reports that you're getting and the dollars lost in these scams?
You know, we don't. The AG's office has been unable to track the exact number in dollars lost for total scams over the years.
Well, we know it's a big number. I mean,
We do.
it's billions of dollars are lost nationally here to scams and frauds every year. And there are millions of people who are being victims to scams. But here in Minnesota, I know you and your office are looking out for us. What are some of the things that you do or you can do to help people who maybe have been victimized by a fraudster?
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that sometimes you can think that you've been victimized by a scam when in fact you've been victimized by a deceptive or misleading trade practice. And it's important for us to hear about that because it's from reports from consumers that allow us to investigate and enforce those deceptive and misleading trade practices. And I'm kind of putting those in two different buckets because frauds and scams are often perpetrated by true criminals, right? And so the best approach from the AG's perspective, which is primarily a civil office, is to deter those people and help Minnesotans avoid them to begin with. But it's not always easy from the outset to determine if it's a scam or if it's you've been victimized by a bad business practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, on our screen we're going to have some phone numbers and the web address for the Attorney General's office for people to contact the office to report a scam or that they've been targeted as a scam. They don't have to actually be a victim to report something as afoot. Is that right?
That's true. You know, if we get a report that they've been targeted by something, the best service that the AG's office can usually provide is by referring you to agencies that you might not realize are relevant. You know, we work with a number of state and local partners and federal partners that we can point complainants to make sure it gets to the right place and that these scams are addressed appropriately.
Well, you mentioned some of the top scams going on in the state right now, so maybe let's talk a little bit more detail about some of them. I think one that you mentioned is the romance scam. Tell us a little bit about how that works. What are some of the red flags that would alert a person to a scam?
So romance scam is maybe not entirely always accurately named. It could be a platonic friendship scam, right? Sure. It's oftentimes someone on social media who approaches you out of the blue or in a comment section and is nice to you. They're your friend. They target people who are lonely and they target people who don't have an adequate social support network, right? And it could start off just by listening to your problems and you listening to them. And eventually it turns into an ask for money. It could be very small, like I need $30 for gas. Or it could be quite large, you know, I'm coming to visit you on the plane, but the plane got held up in customs and I need $2,000 to get through. And ultimately, you know, these small amounts can build up over time and can be romantically induced or it might not be. And the best advice we give to people who may be subject to one of these scams is to talk to your family, talk to your friends, make sure that they're aware that you have this relationship that maybe none of them know about. If this person is, you know, really one of your closest friends or closest romantic partners, you need to make sure that other important people in your life are aware of it and can kind of help you take a step back and make sure you're fully thinking through everything that's going on.
And that's reasonable and logical advice, but we know the scammer tries to isolate the intended victim and say, you know, don't talk to anybody about what we're doing. It's kind of our secret. Let's keep it just between you and me. That's the scammer's way of saying, don't talk to your family or your friends about what's going on with us, right?
Yes, and that's a common tactic you'll see among a number of scams. You know, this is a secret, or you should keep it to yourself, or you need to act now is another one. It's less common in romance scams, as you might imagine, but not unheard of. You know, they could have an emergency pop up and they need money now to get medical treatment, for example. But you're right, that's certainly a red flag of, you know, you don't need to talk to them about me.
One of the other areas you mentioned has to do with real estate, maybe a fraudulent transaction with a deed or just predatory real estate practices. Can you tell us some examples and how they work?
Yeah, so referring to your program that you had with AARP recently, your guest then was speaking about a company that sold contracts for future right to sell the home, for example, right? And this is kind of draws attention to what I'm talking about when I say that there's a fine line between a scam and a business practice that you might not agree with, right? Or that might be illegal. And that's just not to say that it is illegal, but this is the fine line between them, where people might think that that was a scam, but that was a contract that they signed. It was by someone with a name, like a real business that was registered, that can be served with legal process, right? But there is kind of that really finely distinguishing line. So yes, there are those contracts that might be predatory, for sure, that are not necessarily out and out scams, right?
Sure.
Deed scams, on the other hand, and this is also a legitimate service in some sense, that they send you a piece of paper in the mail, you're a new homeowner, and it's a black on white, looks very official letterhead, does not look like it's coming from a company in any way, shape, or form, and it says, you need to get a copy of your deed. We'll do that for you if you give us $99, right? You don't need a copy of your deed for most purposes. And if you call, the relevant government official in your area, which is probably the county recorder, you can probably get it for quite cheap, and certainly without going through a third party. And this is again cutting it very fine between what is a scam and what is a deceptive business practice. But oftentimes you don't need to pay for that type of service. The last common predatory real estate scheme I think we see on a frequent basis are the Craigslist scams, or Zillow sometimes, but more often Craigslist, where people are advertising real estate that they don't actually own. And so they've found a house, they've found a way to get into the house, they've unlocked the house for you, and they start to rent it to you or sell it to you when it's not theirs to rent or sell. And those can be quite pernicious as well.
That could get ugly for the people who are thinking they're having a real transaction take place.
Very ugly. And it can get ugly for the owners too, who had no idea that they now have a tenant, as Minnesota law protects people who then move in under the impression that they have a valid lease.
Well, it's good that you draw a distinction, even as fine as it is, between what's a real scam and what is more a predatory practice or an unfair way of trying to take advantage of somebody. So, Noah, just within the last couple of days, I got an email from Dakota County saying that they are offering a free service that I can sign up for that says if there's any kind of transaction that's related to real estate or the property that I own or the deed or my name associated with it, that I'd get a notice. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that. If Dakota County Recorder's Office is doing that, I could actually see that being a very useful tool.
Well, I need to explore this to make sure that it really is legitimately Dakota County reaching out to me rather than some scammer who wants to get some personal information from me.
That's exactly right. And Dakota County may be instituting that. There has been, like you said, a rise on some of these scam-like behaviors. Mm-hmm. But calling the government agency is another way we would recommend people avoid things like a utility scam, somebody pretending to be Excel, or a government impersonation scam, someone attempting to pretend to be someone from the Social Security Agency.
The imposter scams.
Correct.
Yeah. Are we seeing a lot of utility-related scams here in Minnesota?
Yes. And this is, especially in the cold, right? The cold months we'll get letters or emails or phone calls threatening a consumer with turning off their electricity or their heat unless they pay $200 in a short amount of time, right? Your utility is not going to shut off your heat without giving you a load of process, and in fact, your ability to keep your heat on over the winter is enshrined in Minnesota law. But this is another way scammers will try to target people. They'll threaten you with something that seems very, very bad on a very short time frame, and relying on the hope that you're not going to call the people who would actually have that authority to double check them.
Yeah. So one of the flags that goes along with the imposter scam is the way in which they demand to be paid. They want a gift card, or they want a wire transfer, or they want Bitcoin now, or cryptocurrency, is becoming quite popular. Why do scammers want those kinds of payment methods?
Yeah, so a lot of payment methods that you just spoke about, Bitcoin especially, and wire transfers. Wire transfers are getting rarer, thanks in part to a couple of assurances that the Attorney General's office actually entered into with Western Union some time ago. And I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the other name of the other wire company, but wire transfers are getting rarer for scammers to ask for because those companies have been better about stopping the transactions. But gift cards, cryptocurrency, these are two very difficult to track assets that can be transferred. And so that's why scammers prefer them as media to transfer the money. And of course, Excel and the government are not going to be taking crypto from you to pay for your utility bills.
Cryptocurrency. If I took out my phone and I Googled crypto ATMs near me, I bet you 25 or 30 would pop up just like that. What's the AG's office know about these ATMs that dispense cryptocurrency, and what's going on here and what's going to happen?
It's a good question. You know, crypto is a bit of the Wild West in terms of regulatory structure at this point. The federal SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, is doing some work on how to regulate and track it. Locally in Minnesota, crypto ATMs are just another product. You know, it's a dispensary of a product, and that product is, you know, untethered money, essentially. So there's nothing illegal or scammy per se about cryptocurrency, a valid crypto coin, and we can come back to that later, or a valid crypto ATM, right? The problem comes in when people either direct you to an ATM that doesn't actually do what it's going to do, it just takes your money, or direct you to a coin that they know is fraudulent, a crypto coin, or if they get you to download a proprietary app to invest in their cryptocurrency. And these kinds of scams are called pig butchering, if you want to talk about those.
Yes, let's talk a little bit more about pig butchering.
Yeah, so like many scams, pig butchering relies on people thinking, not thinking that something is too good to be true. So it's almost Ponzi in its allure, right? The scammer will tell you that they've found a way to guarantee a certain percent investment or return on your investment, right? 10%, 20%. Crypto, the sky's the limit in some ways, and they can try and convince you of that. You'll see pig butchering scams often paired with romance scams where they have a long period of building up trust, and then they say, have you heard of this great new, app or coin? And they'll get you to put money into a proprietary app that's not necessarily widespread, or some sort of brokerage that's not real. But that application will show you that your money is going up. And so looking at it from the outside, you could have those 10 to 20% returns. But when you try to withdraw your money, first there's going to be an administrative fee to try and withdraw the money, which they will take from you, and then you will not get your money back. And so pig butchering scams are relatively rare. They're low in number, in part because it takes a lot of effort relative to other scams, and in part because it takes some time to get people to gain their trust. But the dollar reward can be quite high. We're talking millions of dollars people have lost to pig butchering scams.
And they're mostly investment scams that are working in this venue. And it's not a very picturesque name to call it pig butchering, but I think you described a little bit about why it's called that. It's a preparation of the victim over a long period of time, like getting the pigs ready to harvest, so to speak, and then they pounce and take advantage to millions of dollars sometimes.
That's exactly right. The draw of the pig butchering scam to a scammer is that you can keep approaching the same target over and over and over to get them to invest more and more money, like feeding a hog.
Sure. And I understand that many of these practices originate somewhere in Asia, where I've heard that some people are kept as slaves, sort of. They confiscate their passports and say, you can't go anywhere, you've got to stay here and do this routine for us. Have you experienced or heard anything like that?
Not personally. Most of the training that I'd received, the scams that we were seeing for some time were coming out of the Caribbean. That's not to say that there aren't scams coming out of Asia too, but as you might imagine, once the scam conduct exits the United States, Minnesota's jurisdiction becomes very limited.
So you mentioned when we were talking about cryptocurrencies, a legitimate cryptocurrency coin and maybe a fake cryptocurrency coin. Tell us about the fake ones.
Well, it's very difficult to tell from the outside which one is real and which one is fake, right? Unless you are well versed in what cryptocurrency is, and there are white papers published about each coin. Fake coins are, coins that don't actually have any tethering in blockchain or any sort of actual value, right? They never had any value and they never will. They're a made-up coin, for lack of a better word. And when I talk about fake coins, I'm not even talking about, they talk about meme coins, right? Dogecoin is a meme coin.
Yeah.
That's still a real coin. It's an actual asset that you can trade and barter. When I'm talking about fake coins, I'm talking about coins that actually don't exist. I mean, they tell you you're buying a coin, you can see it in this app that they had you download, but it's not something that's tradable.
So how would I know if I bought a real one or a fake one?
Yeah, so I mean, there are a couple of ways to go about doing that. One is to just research. You can use Google and see if you can find anything else on the internet about the coin that you're about to purchase. There are reputable crypto dealers or crypto brokerages, and you could check on those brokerages to see if they even carry the coin. But like many of these scams, and you'll hear me repeat this a lot, the best way to figure it out and think about whether or not it is a scam is to slow down and talk to other people and just run a quick Google search and see if it passes the smell test.
I'm not asking for any trade secrets, but help our viewers understand the process. If I contacted the Attorney General's office and said, I have just been a victim of a cryptocurrency scam, what happens at the AG's office? What starts the process? Can you describe that a little bit for us?
Sure. It can really depend on what was happening around the crypto scam, right? But if it's a very standard scam where we see that someone has purchased a fake coin using a fake app and they've lost all of their money, this is criminal activity. That's my number one thought when I see something like that. My second thought is it probably didn't happen in Minnesota. And so my ability to go after the money or the person wherever they are is probably going to be very limited because it's criminal and it's extra-jurisdictional. And so that's when I start thinking, where can I send this person to get the help they need? Usually that's going to be the FBI or the FTC or both, the FTC being the Federal Trade Commission. And sometimes local PD, but again, it's going to be really fact-specific. Most of the time for that international type scam, it's going to be the FBI or the FTC.
So you do have investigators, though, that work for the Attorney General's office that looks into areas where they can do investigations?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You mentioned several other agencies, and I was going to ask that question. What other groups or agencies does the AG partner with or coordinate with or act together in synchrony to investigate scams and to prosecute them?
Yeah, we work a lot with local police departments. It depends on the scam again, right? Local PDs, I'm probably not referring for a crypto scam originating in Africa or something, right? But we also work with other state AGs. We work with state agencies like the Commerce Fraud Protection Bureau, and we work with federal partners like the FBI, FTC, and SEC when we need to. A lot of this is just information sharing. A lot of it can also be deconfliction to make sure we're not stepping on each other's toes if we were to move forward with an investigation. But some of it is active participation to make sure we're moving in the same direction and potentially bringing concurrent lawsuits.
Well, it's kind of a complex process.
It is.
So, does the AG office recover a lot of funds in scams once they start an investigation?
Again, the line between scams and deceptive business conduct can be quite thin. Outright criminal scams, it is very unlikely to get a recovery from the AG's office. And part of that, again, is because we're not a criminal authority, right? And so we're not able to bring criminal cases. We're not able to serve search warrants on those types of cases. So if you send a CID, or civil investigative demand, or a subpoena to a scammer, I can tell you where that's going, and it's the garbage bin. They're not complying with that. So there have been recoveries on fraud, though, and those recoveries have come, with the help of federal partners, federal criminal partners primarily. And we work with those partners, the U.S. Attorney's Office, for example, to help make sure that people's complaints are heard. I think it was just last year, I want to say it was last year, that the U.S. Attorney's Office recovered millions of dollars from a romance scammer who was located in Minnesota.
Yes, I think I remember hearing about that. Well, related to recovering funds in a scam, I know at this legislative session here in Minnesota, there was a bill that was talked about, a proposed bill that was referred to as the Victim Restitution Fund. And so in the last couple of minutes of the program today, Noah, can you tell us what that's all about, how it's intended to help victims and how it would work?
Yes, so I'll get into the weeds a little bit here.
Yes.
Under Minnesota law, if the Attorney General's office gets an award from a judge, so we bring a lawsuit, the judge gives us an order. If the order says $100 or $100,000 goes to restitution, that money has to go to consumers, okay? If the judge gives us $1 million in penalties and attorney's fees, which the AG is entitled to, those $1 million have to go to the general fund. The AG's office doesn't get to keep it. We can't redirect it to consumers. The Victim Recovery Fund that the AG's office supported was intended to be a pool of money that the AG's office could funnel those penalties and fees into and keep that pool for when we brought a case against companies that were bankrupt and could not provide restitution. And so it's cold comfort for a consumer to complain to us that they've been defrauded, for us to sue that company and win, but that company to be worth $6,000.
Right.
So the Victim Recovery Fund would allow us to keep more of that money and distribute it to consumers in that way.
Well, it's a good intention.
That's right.
To be able to help people who fall victims to scams and frauds. And I'm supposing that bill is going to come around again in the next legislative session. And I know Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, is supportive of that particular move.
Yes, that's right, and I'm sorry I didn't mention that. The bill did not find an author this session, but I am confident that Attorney General Ellison would like to support that in the future.
Well, Noah, as we wrap up the program today, any final thoughts that you'd like to leave our viewers with to help them know more about how the Attorney General's offices work?
A lot of people don't know how the Attorney General's office works, and I appreciate being brought on. I joined the Attorney General's office after I wrote in a letter asking for assistance with my phone bill, and they helped me. There's a lot of things that the AG's office does and can help you with, and I would encourage everyone to write in with a complaint if they have one.
Well, there you have it, folks, from Noah, Assistant Attorney General here in Minnesota, about what the office does for consumers here in Minnesota. There's contact information that's on our screen during the program, so copy down the numbers and the web address and contact the Attorney General's office if you have a question or if you have a complaint about some predatory practice. They will do their best to help you. Thank you for joining us today on Access to Democracy, and remember, all of our other programs are available on accesstodemocracy.com. Noah, thank you.
Thank you very much.